Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Film Haven Reviews. I'm your host Sawyer as always, and today we are finishing up our Man movies theme with the most famous Man movie, I would say, at least most legendary, and that would be Heat from 1995. Before we get into that though, I have some fun news. I was just recently a guest spot on a podcast, a great podcast called Box Office Books, and it's these two sisters who, one of the sisters, Sarah, she reads the book. It's all movies based off of books. And then one of the sisters, Abby, she watches the movie. And so then they come together and kind of compare notes, and they go through the plot and kind of see what changed, what was different. And through that process, there's all kinds of fun little things that get brought up. And I think that kind of longer form of going through the plot is really nice, actually, because it gets you to kind of talk about every little detail, all the little behind the scenes stuff gets brought up, and you'll see a lot of that in the episode that we did together, where we did the movie Total Recall based off of the Philip K. Dick book, or not book, but short story. We Can Remember That For You Wholesale from 1966. That was a great episode. I had such a fun time being on there and talking with them. The episode should be out today, at least at some point today. So I will be putting, as soon as I have that link, I'll be putting it in my show notes. So make sure that you check the show notes for this episode wherever you're watching it. And I'll also put it on my YouTube as well. So wherever you're looking at this episode, look down at the notes and you'll see a link to both their podcast and the specific episode. Okay. I'll probably put their social, they're on Instagram, I know, and they're also on TikTok, so I'll put those links down there as well. But anyway, yes, that was really fun, and I think I might be coming on there again within the next few months, so that will be really cool too. I had a good time, so I'm very excited to be back on there. Moving on, we need to talk about Heat, and wow. So Let's review a little bit here. We started with Thief from 1981, then we went to 1986, and we did Manhunter. And as you guys can tell, I really liked those movies. I think I gave Thief an 8.5 or an 8. I think it was an 8 maybe. But I really enjoyed it. I had a really good mix of like kind of style and substance, and Manhunter kind of took that to the next level. With even more style and even more substance, about the same amount of substance, but there was so much style that you're like, and some precedence there too, because of the serial killer angle and the kind of newness of this crime thriller vibe that would then be copied throughout the 90s. But Thief and this movie that we're talking about today, Heat, they definitely seem like I think there's definitely a trajectory here between Thief, Manhunter, and then now Heat. Now I know he probably made some movies in between these, but at the same time, they do feel linked in some ways. To me, Heat feels like the culmination of those two films put together. A little bit more Thief than Manhunter, but there's still some. I think he's really perfected his form. Michael Mann has by the time he makes Heat, and in some ways, it is like a more fully realized version of Thief, because a lot of the same themes of criminality and how the American dream, or just like that idea of like just one last score, got to get that big take and then I can ride off into the sunset. That's still a pretty big theme in this movie. Maybe institutionalized people that are kind of being funneled into a life of crime afterwards, to the point where they don't really know what else to do. They just kind of do it on auto mode because this is how I make money. This is how I grew up making money, and I may have spent time in jail, but now this is what I do, so I'm going to do it. There's a very famous scene between Al Pacino and Robert De Niro in the coffee shop. We'll be talking about that, I'm sure, later, where they kind of meet up together and they have this long dialogue. Al Pacino is the detective that is on the case for Robert De Niro and trying to bring his crew down before he does something crazy. And before they have a big showdown, they have this kind of smaller dialogue beforehand that was a little bit more civil. And in it, they both kind of talk about how they're two sides of the same coin. They're both people that just can't stop doing what they're doing. Al Pacino's life is going down the drain because he's just solely focused on being a killer, being a hunter of criminals. Whereas Robert De Niro, he's never really had a life, and even though he's starting to try to have one, the only way he knows how to set himself up for a real life is by doing one big score, which, what does that sound like? Sounds like Thief. James Caan's character and Robert De Niro's character from Thief and then Heat, respectively, they're very similar. I think that there's a lot of kind of through lines there and thematically very similar as well. However, Heat is a 2 hour and 50-minute long movie. It is without a doubt an epic. I would call it a crime epic. Not a mob movie, but a crime epic. I would say this is like Michael Mann's Goodfellas, whereas I think most people would agree that Goodfellas is probably Scorsese's magnum opus, especially when it comes to mob movies or crime movies. Whereas this is definitely my so far. Now, of course, I've only seen 4 Michael Mann movies, but even critically, I mean, if you look at the IMDb, it's got a 76 Metascore, which is still for a critic score is very good. But then user score is 8.3. So a lot of people love this movie, and I can see why, because now I've seen it, and this movie has had so much hype behind it, even after it came out. I mean, it's just like. It's Heat, man. Everybody knows Heat. I hadn't seen it, but I knew it. Of course I had. Although, what real quick caveat, I thought that there was like a really famous car chase scene in this movie, but there wasn't one. The big scene where I thought it was going to happen, it didn't happen. They get out of the car. The car gets shot out, and then they leave, and then they have the big fight in the streets, which I did know that happened, but I thought somewhere in there was a big car chase scene, but I don't know. Wasn't in there, so I'm glad I didn't put it in my car chase movies theme, because that would have been sorely disappointed in that way. But I wasn't disappointed by the movie. I did want that scene to happen, but anyway, that's a caveat. My point being is that this is an epic film. Thief was a tight 90, I think, maybe a little bit longer, but it was more of a character study of one person, whereas this film is it's a character study with 2 people, but they also develop a lot of side characters, like Val Kilmer's character, but there's a lot of characters in the film. The Allstate guy, everybody knows him because his voice is very recognizable. He has a small part, maybe 3-4 scenes in the movie, but you kind of care about him. And I think that was one of the things that Michael Mann did really well with this movie, was making you care about characters that you're not seeing very often. So you really got to give it. I don't know where that sauce comes from, because some directors can do that, some writers can do that, where you just film a scene so effectively that it just like you care about these characters instantly. Whereas some movies try to build kind of character development for a long time, and you still just don't care. I don't know. I think there was just something about, there's some magic in this movie that definitely has the ability of having this large cast of characters without somehow feeling like it gets lost in the weeds. I'd say that it could have been just slightly tighter, especially in the second half, but honestly, I wouldn't want to take anything out either, so I'm a little conflicted on that. But it is keeping me away from giving it a 10, because I'm going to be honest with you, halfway ththrough the movie, I was like, is this a 10? I don't do that very often. I don't even know. I mean, if I only done it once on the podcast, I think it was Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, which is a great movie. But yeah, I was thinking, this is a 10. Like, this is incredible. This is everything that Thief and Manhunter was, which I gave Manhunter a 9 out of 10, but more and bigger and better. It's got the cinematography. It's beautiful, beautiful movie. I mean, Michael Mann's got a style, obviously, and that same nighttime neon-y light, good use of lights and contrast and blues and kind of neon-y greens. I mean, all those are just used perfectly in this film once again. I mean, I don't need to even go over it too much, because if you guys have been listening to the last 2 movies, the reviews on those, then you know what this is all about. But just imagine those 2 movies, and it's got that again. I don't know. I think it might be the same cinematographer as Manhunter, which makes sense. But it's also got the substance of writing, the pacing. Like I said, there's only slight issue, but Manhunter had a slight issue with that too. I think Michael Mann just likes taking his time. And so if you kind of lock into that and are okay with it, then it's really fine. And I was locked in. This movie sucks you in. I was very surprised by the way the narrative worked, because I was expecting it to just be a pretty straight, like, bad guys versus good guys. But they take a lot of time to develop both Al Pacino's side of things and then also Robert De Niro's side of things. Speaking of which, almost 10 minutes into episode, and I haven't told you what the actual story is. It's pretty simple. I think most people can understand that. While there is complexity in the actual details, the overall, I think IMDb's kind of just overview is better than the storyline because it gets too much. We don't need to read all that. So I'll just read from IMDb here. It says, a group of high-end professional thieves start to feel the heat from the LAPD when they unknowingly leave a verbal cue at their latest heist. So the intro of the movie is basically a big heist setup where they take over an armored car. And in it, they have this new guy that they shouldn't be trusting very much. He's kind of like an alot addition, and he is obviously like a psycho, and he ends up murdering one of the armed guards, and it kind of blows everything up. It doesn't go it's successful, but it doesn't go the way that they were expecting it. It's a lot messier, a lot more to investigate. That's where Al Pacino comes in. He comes in and he's like this hotshot detective who works specifically with bringing down organized crime. And Al Pacino is so good in this. I mean, he's better than Robert De Niro, honestly. He is the main character in some ways. I mean, he's the one that you're paying more attention to. Don't get me wrong, Robert De Niro is really fun to watch in this, and his character is very fleshed out. He is great, as always. But I do think that Al Pacino is the one that steals the show in this movie because he is smart. He is so smart, and you can just see the wheels turning in his face. He's bombastic. He's that normal Al Pacino, hoo-ah, kind of like yelling and explosive acting, Glengarry Glen Ross kind of stuff. But it fits his character so well. You know he cares, but you know that he just cannot drop his job. He's got a wife and a stepdaughter, and there's all kinds of drama with that. And as the movie progresses, it's a pretty classic story in a lot of ways on both sides. The other one we've already touched on, it's just like Thief. Then on his side, on Al Pacino's side, it's that classic, like the cop that can't, be home. He's got to do work. And because we're watching the movie on both sides, we know what the stakes are. So you kind of want to be like, oh man, to his wife, like if you just knew what he had to deal with. But the point is that when will it ever end? It's always going to be something. Like if it's not this storyline of sorts with Robert De Niro, as soon as he catches that man, he's going to have to catch somebody else. So when does it end? Everything is always the most important. So when do you have time for family? And I mean, once again, that's a classic story, but this is also a classic movie. And at the same time, too, even though that storyline has probably been done before 1995, I would imagine it has. It still is the way that it's done. The development is very realistic. It's very understandable. You understand the wife's point of view. You understand Al Pacino's point of view. You understand, in some ways, the thinking behind Robert De Niro's character. I think I saw a user review where someone was saying like you will like care about both sides actively the whole time, and there will be times when you don't like either of them. There are times that Al Pacino does stuff and you're like, you're just as bad as the criminals, and then there's times when the criminals do stuff and you're like, you're just a person trying to live a life. Almost, yeah, all the criminals have wives or very serious girlfriends, and Robert De Niro's character, gets a love interest, and he's trying to, in some ways, try out having a relationship, and like I said before, riding off into the sunset. He finds someone that he actually thinks he could care for, and while he's actively fighting, being as cold as possible, he cares about the people in his crime group. He even tells one of them, like, hey man, you got a wife, you've got money in trust funds, you've got money, in stocks. You should walk away from this before we do this big job. And he's like, the other guy, Tom Sizemore's character, is like, nah, man, this is what I do. This is why I do it. Like he said, the action is the juice. And which is unfortunate. That goes into a little bit of the thief stuff where it's like, yeah, he says that it is one more job, but when will it ever be enough? And at what point do you just admit to yourself that going on the take, doing the job is the thing that you want to do with your life? And then they play with that very well. All the side characters, I kind of wish that Val Kilmer's character would have been fleshed out a little bit more, but at the same time, I kind of don't, because he was a loser. I'm just going to be honest. He had a gambling addiction. It wasn't good to his wife. He said he loved her, but he had girls on the side. I mean, he was a problem. He was the problem in the movie in a lot of ways. Actually, yeah. If this whole movie would have been different, if, I mean, they think Mangrove, the guy from the beginning, the one that kind of the psycho that botched the original armed robbery, that he's the problem, but really it's Val Kilmer because he needs this man, you know, like when they're basically the Heat, you know, there's a lot of talk about heat in the movie, which I do appreciate that. Anyone who knows me knows that I love when they say the name of the movie in the movie, and I'm always like, oh, they did it. They said the name. And they do that a lot in this movie. And because it is a big part of the concept of the film, which is, I mean, truly, the overall concept of this movie is this is cops and robbers. I mean, this is probably the best cops and robbers movie that's ever been made, because it fleshes out both sides. You were very interested in how the cop is going to catch the robber, and you're very interested in how the robber is going to get away from the cop. Like, you're equally as invested in both sides. And so, yeah, the problem is that at the kind of crux of all that is the heat that's being put on the criminals by the cops. They're sweating them out because they're surveilling them. They're letting them know, we know where you are. We're watching you, you know, mess up. And then you've got the heat on the cop side of their superiors being like, you got to catch this. You got to catch these guys. You're on a time limit. They're going to do something bad, and you should catch them before they do that. There's heat all over the place. There's heat from the guys, you know, the robbers and their wives or their significant others who don't want them to be doing this. There's heat all over the place. Pressure that they're putting themselves into. But there's a little bit of a caveat saying that at least Robert De Niro's character is institutionalized. He's been to prison for a long time, and he even said, like, I'm not going back. It's that kind of classic thing as well. But anyway, what I love about the movie, let's kind of rein it in a little bit. I know I've been kind of talking pretty freely here, but most of the people I feel like have seen this movie or at least know generally what it's been about. I mean, this was a huge deal at the time because it was the first time that Robert De Niro and Al Pacino had ever shared the screen together. They'd been in the same movie before, Godfather Part 2, but they didn't share the screen. They never filmed together. So this was the first time, which is amazing to me. 95, I mean, both of their careers ballooned in the 70s, and I think most people kind of, not conflate as in get them mixed up, but they kind of conjoin each other's careers, Al Pacino and Robert De Niro, at least growing up. You think of those two as these like titans of like mob movies, and I don't know, they just kind of seem like they're on the same level as far as acting goes and legendary status. And this movie, maybe because this movie had already come out by the time I was 2 years old, this was one of the reasons why their legacy was kind of implanted in my brain as them two together. But this was a big deal at the time, a lot of hype, because they were two titans of acting and they were like going to be in this big movie together, and it was great. So the thing that makes this movie so good is that they do so much developing. There is action spread out and in it, but the action is not the point. The action is not just an ends to the means, or what am I trying to say? What I'm trying to say is that the movie was actually more about the development, the course of the film, and it made those action scenes more impactful. For example, like, yeah, it was a good thing to start off with the robbery of the armed car, because it set the tone of like, oh, these guys are very calculated. They're a crew that knows what they're doing. They're led by Robert De Niro, who knows exactly, he's smarter than everybody else. Sets that up. And then it also sets up the post-investigation where you get to see Al Pacino kind of stretch his legs and show his credentials. And so you're like, okay, this is a great way to set up the two characters. But then it spends like, I mean, an hour 10 just developing all their characters. There might be I think there was like one or two little action scenes in between, but they were very short. And then you have, it all culminates a little over halfway through the movie with the big bank heists. And that scene is legendary. I'd heard of it before. And it's pretty much like 100% the inspiration for the GTA 4 bank heist. If anyone, a lot of people play GTA, so you know what I'm talking about. But the GTA 4 bank heist mission that's very famous in that game. It's 100% like kind of a legendary scene. And GTA in general, I think, takes a lot from this movie, because there's even a character, Tom Newman's character, that was cool to see him because he was the Tooth Fairy from Manhunter. So they're kind of recasting him a little bit. He plays a character that is basically exactly the same character from GTA 5. There's like kind of like the Q, the like tech guy who knows all this stuff about computers and can get you into a security system kind of stuff. But anyway, that scene at the bank, for example, I read that they actually mic'd the street. Like they set the street up for sound so that the gunshots in the on scene, they didn't have to dub it afterwards in post. They could just use the real gunshots of the blanks that they were using, and it gave you that visceral, very realistic feeling and an impactful kind of feeling during that scene where the bank heist goes well until it doesn't, because basically the cops are tipped off. And so it results in them having this big, long, drawn out firefight in the middle of the streets in downtown LA. And it's intense, and it's intense and not in necessarily a way where you're like, oh, cool action. It's like sad, because you're basically seeing the worst case scenario for everyone involved. The cops are dying. Major characters up until this point, by the way, like side characters, like some of the partners of Al Pacino, detectives, the guy who plays, ironically, speaking of Manhunter and Hannibal Lecter stuff, the guy who plays Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs, he dies, and it's just like, oh, he's just dead. And he dies instantly, and you're just like, oh, okay. And some of the robbers die that are big in the movie, like Tom Sizemore's character, and you're just like, oh my God, like the stakes. Like, it was a really great run up to that scene. And I think the thing, like if I'm just talking about things that keeping it from 10, is that there was such a high there that the exhaust from that caused the movie to drift just a little bit. And that's what I really mean by the pacing in the second half being just could have been just slightly better. It would have been like basically a perfect movie if that pacing would have been just a little bit better after the heist scene, because it was just such a culmination. I mean, it would be like, because this movie is so epic and drawn out, it kind of feels like this could be easily like a show. Like nowadays you do it like a dramatized series, like a limited series, and this would have been the season finale, the big bank heist. But no, there's actually there's actually 50 more minutes of the movie after the bank heist. And so then there's tons of development, and there's not tons of development. All that development that they have in the first half of the movie then now comes to roost, and you get to see all these characters react and act in their crisis mode after the ball has been dropped. And so it is important to have that bank heist, because now everything's set in motion, and it's like, what are they going to do? You know, Al Pacino's life is completely falling apart after that. Robert De Niro is he's being forced to decide what he's going to do, whether he's going to go for revenge on the people that basically ratted them out, or if he's going to just ride off into the sunset like he could. And can he do it? Does he have enough restraint, enough desire for a different life to actually get away from his sense of revenge and sense of duty to his compatriots that were killed because of the rat? You know, all these kind of questions are coming together, and that cat and mouse kind of vibe is coming into full force, where Al Pacino is going to overdrive trying to find out where Robert De Niro is. Val Kilmer's situation is also resolving at the same time. So yeah, I mean, that's the movie. I could talk forever because it is such a long, drawn out movie. There's so many individual scenes that are great, like the coffee scene. There's some fun tidbits about that one too. Like, it was definitely a scene that it felt iconic watching it. I had known it existed, but you can just feel the energy of that scene. And I know that people at the time were also feeling it. And even when they're making it, all three, Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, and Michael Mann, all said that this was their most excited scene. They were all so excited to write this scene, and to act this scene. And this is literally that Robert De Niro said the reason why he even took the role was because this scene was in the movie, and he wanted to do that. He wanted to run that scene with Al Pacino, and it is amazing. The acting is incredible. some of the most iconic lines come from that scene. And then it is also just story-wise, it is impactful because you've been seeing these two characters, these two titans of the story kind of clashing in a way that is civil, and you really just want them to be buddies, and they want each other to be buddies. That's what's so crazy about that scene. I think it culminates at the end with this really great part where they're basically like, yeah, but we can't, and like we could be friends in another life is what they're saying in the subtext, but I'm gonna, when it comes to it and you put me in a corner, I'm gonna shoot you. And Al Pacino's like, when it comes to it, if you're going to be in the way of, if you're going to be killing someone else and making them, their wife a widow, then I'm going to take you down, he said. And, but there's a moment at the end where they both kind of smile at each other. And it's a really subtle smile, but it's obvious that they realize that they are two sides of the same coin. And both of them could easily be on either side. Like if Robert De Niro would have made different choices, he would have been a great detective, and vice versa with Al Pacino if he would have made some worse decisions. Great scene though, but they also didn't want to do any rehearsals. Al Pacino said he didn't want to do any rehearsals because he wanted that unfamiliarity between the two characters to be as genuine as possible, and they did that. Michael Mann took those notes and said, okay, let's do it. Also interesting, as far as little tidbits go, the movie itself is based loosely on the truth. I mean, it's obviously it's not based on a true story, quote unquote, but it is inspired by a situation that Michael Mann had a friend who was a detective who spent just like his whole life going after this criminal who had the exact same name as Robert De Niro's character in the movie, which was Neil Macaulay. So he even used the same name for Robert De Niro's character. So in a way, it is kind of true. Obviously, the entire story basically around it is not. But yeah, that's the film. I think I'm going to give it a 9.5. Truly, it was close to 10. I feel comfortable in saying this is the best cops and robbers movie of all time. It is the ultimate cops and robbers movie. And if you haven't seen this, it's an afternoon for sure, or a night. You need to make space for it because it's 2 hours and 50 minutes long, and it's truly an epic. I would definitely watch it in one sitting and pay attention. It's like one of those where you really, and it's not hard to, because as soon as you start, you're already enveloped in the story. So but it is truly an epic film. I definitely this theme has just been, I was not expecting it. I knew the movies were pretty good, but I wasn't expecting to enjoy each one so much and in increasing amounts. I don't know if it's just the movies themselves, which I do think that's a big part of it, but it's also just like, as I'm getting more comfortable with his style, Michael Mann's style, and I'm appreciating him more and more, and I'm getting a little bit more endeared to him as a director, that by the time I get to, arguably his best film, Heat, I'm like, absolute cinema, the meme with Martin Scorsese. This movie is absolute cinema. It is a 9.5. The only thing that I say is I wish Val Kilmer's character was a little bit more interesting, and I wish that the pacing was just a little tighter in the second half. That's really my only complaint. Also, whoever was doing Val Kilmer's hair, it's got to be on purpose, but geez, he just had what a rat's nest like the whole time. I was just like, come on, man. It's obviously on purpose, because if you look at the poster, it's right there. You can see it. It's just crazy hair, and I'm just like, towards the end, he cuts it, and it looks a lot more like, his Iceman, like his character in Top Gun and stuff. And I'm like, that's so much better. Jeez, like, definitely get the rat's nest out of here. I think that was part of it too. I was just annoyed by him. He was just kind of a baby, honestly. And I didn't love his character, but luckily he wasn't in the movie very much. The movie was really about Al Pacino and Robert De Niro, and this is some of the best acting I've ever seen of them. I think because I haven't seen some movies of Al Pacino's that are more famous, like Dog Day Afternoon, I think is the one I'm thinking of that I've always heard has kind of been his best. But I think this is the best acting I've seen from Al Pacino in my viewing experience. I definitely, he's kind of a meme now, almost, especially in his older age. He's just kind of, and because he's always yelling and doing the hoo-ah and, all that kind of stuff, you kind of make fun of him a little bit. But when he hits. And you get over that memeness real fast because he is that good of an actor. So kudos to you, Al Pacino. I know it's a big shocker, but he's actually a really good actor, believe it or not. Anyway, that's it for this week. I don't know what theme I'm doing next time. I do know what theme I'm doing next time. I forgot that I did. So I'm very excited for that. Remember that I'm now taking a week off next. Week off is maybe not the right way to say it. A week off on themes. My movie news episode's coming out live this upcoming Sunday. I believe it's the 30th, the last day of the month. And then I will be releasing the live episode on Friday. For you to watch if you didn't watch it live. And that way you can keep up with what's going on in the movie news. And I can have a week to prepare and focus on some other stuff because it's getting really busy here with the real estate stuff. And also, I don't know if I will be or not putting a lot of editing on this. If you're watching this on video on YouTube, like I said, I'm going to have to be scaling it back sometimes. And I'm definitely... This week I'm getting things are filling up fast. So I apologize if I didn't get to overlay all the editing and stuff for those of you that are watching on YouTube or on Spotify when it comes out on video on there. But I'm sorry that it has to be like that, but I'm just busy. I'm trying here, guys. But this movie was so long that kind of took a lot of the time that I would probably be spending on editing. So anyway, I hope you guys have a great week this week, and I will see you next Friday.